I'm Stephen Monteith, and I'm here reading Frankenstein or The Modern Prometheus by Mary Shelley. It's the Barnes and Noble Classics edition. It has some footnotes and endnotes, and I might be referencing those at some point during the read because it'll give us a greater context for what kind of world that Mary Shelley lived in and what influenced her writing. We're in chapter 10 now. I don't. If this is the first time watching it, I don't. I don't read the entire thing aloud. Um, I do read some passages from it aloud, and I give my thoughts while I'm reading it. At, um, I'm not very good at reading aloud. My throat gets kind of scratchy besides. And at this point in the story, Victor has created the creature, Frankenstein's monster. He doesn't know where it is, and he hasn't told anybody that he's created it. But the creature has already killed his younger brother William, and his friend Justine has been put to death for the crime. So, of course, Victor feels responsible for both of their deaths because he never told anyone about the creature, or he doesn't feel that he can tell anyone about the creature because who would believe that he, a young man who was barely out of university, was able to construct life. Anyway, his family, including his foster sister Elizabeth, whom he calls cousin, but is actually kind of in love with. They're all mourning, and he has taken a little trip to the mountains. They're in Switzerland and thereabouts, but he's taken a little day trip on his own to be alone and to try and recover and decide what he needs to do. So that's where we are at the start of chapter 10. He talks. He describes the mountains and the valley and the glacier that are all there, the sounds and the sights and nature itself. He says, "These sublime and magnificent scenes afforded me the greatest consolation that I was capable of receiving. They elevated me from all littleness of feeling, and although they did not remove my grief, they subdued and tranquilized it. In some degree also, they diverted my mind from the thoughts over which it had brooded for the last month. I retired to rest at night, my slumbers, as it were, waited on and ministered to by the semblance of grand shapes which I had contemplated during the day. They congregated round me. The unstained snowy mountain top, the glittering pinnacle, the pine woods, and ragged bare ravine, the eagle soaring amidst the clouds, they all gathered round me and bade me be at peace. Where had they fled when the next morning I awoke? All of soul inspiring fled with sleep, and dark melancholy clouded every thought. The rain was pouring in torrents, and thick mists hid the summits of the mountains, so that I even saw not the faces of those mighty friends. Still I would penetrate their misty veil, and seek them in their cloudy retreats. Even though it's raining and storming, he decides to climb to the peak without a guide. Says that he knows the path, and that the presence of another would destroy the solitary grandeur of the scene. It's very foreboding, isn't it? There's a stanza in here. We rest. A dream has power to poison sleep. We rise. One wandering thought pollutes the day. We feel, conceive or reason, laugh or weep, embrace fond woe or cast our cares away. It is the same. For be it joy or sorrow, the path of its departure is still free. Man's yesterday may ne'er be like his morrow. Naught may endure but mutability. And this quotation, it says, is the last stanza of Percy Shelley's Mutability. And it says, the poem explores the certainty of change in human existence. Sure enough, Frankenstein's sense of peace and oneness with the scene before him is about to be violently disrupted. Mary doing a little shout out to her husband in the text itself. I wonder if he might have suggested that she put it in there. We know that he had a hand in writing the introduction, at least. It was nearly noon when I arrived at the top of the ascent. For some time I sat upon the rock that overlooks the sea of ice. A mist covered both that and the surrounding mountains. Presently a breeze dissipated the cloud, and I descended upon the glacier. The surface is very uneven, rising like the waves of a troubled sea, descending low and interspersed by rifts that sink deep. The field of ice is almost a league in width, but I spent nearly 2 hours in crossing it. The opposite mountain is a bare perpendicular rock. From the side where I now stood, Montanvert was exactly opposite, at the distance of a league, and above it rose Mont Blanc, in awful majesty. My heart, which was before sorrowful, now swelled with something like joy. I exclaimed, "Wandering spirits, if indeed ye wander, and do not rest in your narrow beds, allow me this faint happiness. or take me as your companion away from the joys of life." As I said this, I suddenly beheld the figure of a man at some distance, advancing towards me with superhuman speed. He bounded over the crevices in the ice, among which I had walked with caution. His stature also, as he approached, seemed to exceed that of man. I was troubled. A mist came over my eyes, and I felt a faintness seize me, but I was quickly restored by the cold gale of the mountains. I perceived, as the shape came nearer, sight tremendous and abhorred, that it was the wretch whom I had created. I trembled with rage and horror, resolving to wait his approach and then close with him in mortal combat. He approached. His countenance bespoke bitter anguish, combined with disdain and malignity, while its unearthly ugliness rendered it almost too horrible for human eyes. Frankenstein goes back and forth between referring to the creature as him or as it. Wonder if that was deliberate. "Devil," I exclaimed, "do you dare approach me? And do not you fear the fierce vengeance of my arm wreaked upon your miserable head? Begone, vile insect! Or rather stay, that I may trample you to dust. Know that I could, with the extinction of your miserable existence, restore those victims whom you have so diabolically murdered." And now we hear the creature's first words. "I expected this reception," said the demon. "All men hate the wretched. How then must I be hated, who am miserable beyond all living things? Yet you, my creator, detest and spurn me. Thy creature, to whom thou art bound by ties only dissoluble by the annihilation of one of us. You purpose to kill me. How dare you sport thus with life? Do your duty towards me, and I will do mine towards you and the rest of mankind. If you will comply with my conditions, I will leave them and you at peace. But if you refuse, I will glut the maw of death until it be satiated with the blood of your remaining friends." Abhorred monster! Fiend that thou art! The tortures of hell are too mild a vengeance for thy crimes. Wretched devil, you reproach me with your creation? Come on, then, that I may extinguish the spark which I so negligently bestowed. My rage was within bounds. I sprang on him, impelled by all the feelings which can arm one against the existence of another. He easily eluded me and said, "Be calm. I entreat you to hear me before you give vent to your hatred on my devoted head. Have I not suffered enough that you seek to increase my misery? Life, although it may only be an accumulation of anguish, is dear to me, and I will defend it. Remember, thou hast made me more powerful than thyself. My height is superior to thine, my joints more supple. But I will not be tempted to set myself in opposition to thee. I am thy creature, and I will be even mild and docile to my natural lord and king, if thou wilt also perform thy part, the which thou owest to me. O Frankenstein, be not equitable to every other, and trample upon me alone, to whom thy justice and even thy clemency and affection is most due. Remember that I am thy creature. I ought to be thy Adam, but I am rather the fallen angel, whom thou drivest from joy for no misdeed. Everywhere I see bliss, from which I alone am irrevocably excluded. I was benevolent and good. Misery made me a fiend. Make me happy, and I shall again be virtuous." Be gone. I will not hear you. There can be no community between you and me. We are enemies. Be gone, or let us try our strength in a fight in which one must fall. How can I move thee? Will no entreaties cause thee to turn a favorable eye upon thy creature, who implores thy goodness and compassion? Believe me, Frankenstein, I was benevolent. My soul glowed with love and humanity. But am I not alone, miserably alone? You, my creator, abhor me. What hope can I gather from your fellow creatures who owe me nothing? They spurn and hate me. The desert mountains and dreary glaciers are my refuge. I have wandered here many days. The caves of ice, which I only do not fear, are a dwelling to me, and the only one which man does not grudge. These bleak skies I hail, for they are kinder to me than your fellow beings. If the multitude of mankind knew of my existence, they would do as you do, and arm themselves for my destruction. Shall I not then hate them who abhor me? I will keep no terms with my enemies. I am miserable, and they shall share my wretchedness. Yet it is in your power to recompense me, and deliver them from an evil which it only remains for you to make so great that not only you and your family, but thousands of others shall be swallowed up in the whirlwinds of its rage. Let your compassion be moved, and do not disdain me. Listen to my tale. When you have heard that, abandon or commiserate me, as you shall judge that I deserve. But hear me. The guilty are allowed by human laws, bloody as they are, to speak in their own defense before they are condemned. Listen to me, Frankenstein. You accuse me of murder, and yet you would, with a satisfied conscience, destroy your own creature. Oh, praise the eternal justice of man. Yet I ask you not to spare me. Listen to me, and then, if you can, and if you will, destroy the work of your hands. It says here in the footnotes, the endnotes, that the phrase "the eternal justice of man" is evidence, along with other passages here, that Shelley is talking to her own father throughout the book. It was dedicated to William Godwin, and both Godwin's political philosophy and his novel informed the story and messages of Frankenstein, though the influence of his book Political Justice is the most pervasive. Godwin wrote in that book, "If it be just that I should confer a benefit, it is just that another man should receive it. And if I withhold from him that to which he is entitled, he must justly complain." So basically, what they're saying here is that the monster is of the same mind as Shelley's father. It says, recognizing the inequalities of his masters and his own situation, the monster takes Godwin's advice and speaks up. It's a serious amount of examining of justice in this book so far. It says here, the creature led the way across the ice, and that Frankenstein followed. My heart was full, and I did not answer him, but as I proceeded, I weighed the various arguments that he had used, and determined at least to listen to his tale. I was partly urged by curiosity, and compassion confirmed my resolution. I had hitherto supposed him to be the murderer of my brother, and I eagerly sought a confirmation or denial of this opinion. Remember, at this point, he has no specific knowledge that the creature killed his brother, or why he may have done so. For the first time, also, I felt what the duties of a creator towards his creature were, and I thought to render him happy before I complained of his wickedness. These motives urged me to comply with his demand. It says here that this little philosophy may have come from Shelley's mother. In her book, A Vindication of the Rights of Women, she reminds parents of their shaping influence on children. A great proportion of the misery that wanders in hideous forms around the world is allowed to arise from the negligence of parents. That's the end of chapter 10. This is actually an interesting little bit here. With as I've reminded you a couple of times in the previous videos, you have to remember that this story is written as if Frankenstein, Victor Frankenstein, is telling it to somebody he meets at the end of his life. And that person is telling that tale to his sister. And at various points in the story already, we've had Victor relaying stories that other people have told him, like when Elizabeth told him about Justine, and when his friend Clerville told him about his family. And now we're going to get the monster, the creature, telling Victor his own story. It's like a nesting egg of stories being told. It's certainly an interesting literary device. Most stories, I think, that people read, they're getting it firsthand. You know, you pick up the book and you're like, the book is saying this is what happened to this person here, or at the very least you could consider that secondhand. You could say that that's the author relaying the character's story, even though it's told as if, you know. But in this point, we've got Victor telling other people's stories to his friend Robert, who's telling his stories to his sister. So it's very much like nested narrators. You start to wonder if you're actually getting the real story. There's a trope called the unreliable narrator, and basically it says that if a story is being told by one of the characters, you have to take into account whether or not that character is reliable. And it's very difficult in some instances. And and sometimes deliberately so, to take what the narrator is saying seriously because it's so colored by their own perceptions. Now, I don't know if that's what Mary Shelley intended here. You know, there could be many details that she's saying were lost already, but certainly we know that Frankenstein had already determined to his own satisfaction up to this point that the monster, the creature, had killed his brother, that the creature was a murderer. So, and now we find out that the monster, the creature, has his own side of the story that he wants to tell. And so Victor is going to be forced to question his own perceptions of everything that's happened. So so maybe so maybe there's a bit of an unreliable narrator thing going on here. We'll learn a little bit more when I read next time, but I think we're going to stop here for now. Thank you for watching. This is definitely an interesting exercise for me, reading and reviewing this book online. If you want me to review any of your books, you can get in touch with me. You can message me on here, or I don't know, there'll be details on my website about how to get in touch with me. And you can, of course, read all of my books. The first 3 books in the Trials of Stephen Fell are here. You can read those, and I have other books as well. There will be links to whatever e-reader you use on my website. Be sure to let me know what you think of them. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you more later.